Okay, I believe we are live, and I am hoping that you can hear and see me right now. Um, this is Veronique Fischer. I am from Noble Sky International. I am the head of performance and development, and I am here to speak to you about whether foreigners can own properties in the US. I am hoping you can see me because my computer is acting up a little bit. It might be the internet in Bali that is looking funny. So hopefully the line will be good. If not, please feel free to post a comment. As long as you register, I should see the comment on the Facebook page. So our topic today is always one that is very interesting to me because, as you could see, I am not local. I am from France originally. And when I came to Asia nearly 30 years ago, it was a little bit surprising to me that as a foreigner, I could not purchase properties in the US. In Asia, that I couldn't own land. And I currently live in Bali. And of course, in Bali, as a foreigner, I cannot own land. I can own a leasehold for a certain amount of time, but I cannot own the land because in France, if you're a foreigner, or in the US, it is perfectly legal to own the land. And in a lot of cases, when we have interactions with people on Facebook or on YouTube, we hear a lot of people that say to us, well, actually, you must not, you cannot own land. It's not possible to do what Noble Sky does for its clients, that you cannot own land in the US. And let me reassure you that it is absolutely legal, allowed, and encouraged that foreigners own properties in the US and own the land. And in United States, what you buy is you buy the land, and the house that sits on it automatically becomes yours. But you do not buy the building, you really buy the piece of land that it is sitting on. And legally, once you own the piece of land, you own everything around the land. That means you own the building, you might own the airspace if you're in the city, for instance, and if you are gardening and you find gold in the land, that belongs to you as well. So that's how it works. And as a foreigner, there is absolutely no problem for you to be owning a piece of land in the US, as long, of course, as you are registered and you pay taxes, right? Or the ownership pays taxes. Of course, there are different ways of doing it. And the founders of Noble Sky International, Ralph and Ice, have spent quite a long time finding the best way to do it. And in particular, there are legal structures that will allow you to both have a solid ownership of your property, but also limit both your liabilities legally and limit your tax payments as well. And for that, actually, Ralph always says that this is a $20,000 piece of advice. For that, it is recommended that you actually have a corporation own the land. So own the land and the property. So that means that the property that you purchase will be owned by a limited liability company. And you yourself, your entry point into the US will be either a limited liability company or a C Corp in the state of Wyoming. We chose Wyoming because Wyoming does not have state tax. You would still pay tax, but you would only pay federal tax, not local tax, right? And the other thing with Wyoming, of course, is that it is really easy to form a company in Wyoming. In fact, I have a good friend in the United States who resides in Texas and works in Texas, and she has a company, she has a business, and her business is owned by a LLC that she formed in Wyoming. So when we were discussing this, she was actually quite surprised that we were using Wyoming for our structures. So that's the first thing. On the legal front, you want to make sure that you have the right structure to keep yourself safe and to pay as little tax as possible. I hope that makes sense. Next, how do you acquire a property in the US? Well, it's actually really, really simple. I have many friends who are realtors in the US, and I could literally go online, go on the website. The most famous websites would be something like Zillow.com, for instance, or Redfin.com. And from that website, I could find a property that I like, do an online viewing of it, and literally purchase it right here, right there. All I have to do is pick up my phone, call my friend, and say, is this still available? I would like to write an offer on this property. Of course, whether the offer gets accepted or not at the moment may be a challenge. You may have heard that the supply of property is actually a little bit on the low side at the moment, which is one of the reasons why prices are going up. And a lot of properties that are desirable get many offers, not just one. So that's something to keep in mind. But it's fairly simple. I can do it on the phone. And then supposing that the seller actually accepts my offer, I can do all the paperwork online. I can use the online documents, DocuSign, for instance, to sign all the papers. I can, of course, everybody uses online banking. I may have to go to the bank to transfer the money, but I can, of course, transfer the money. I do not need to carry it in a briefcase and take it all the way to the US. All this can happen without me setting foot in the US. So I hope that makes sense. Now, of course, as an investor, you may not want to be investing directly via Zillow because, of course, in that case, it's usually the highest price. So at Noble Sky, we actually look for properties that are usually a little bit more distressed, need a bit or a lot of TLC, so that we can buy at a discount to the market value. But even in that case, it can be done from Asia without setting foot in the US. Before COVID, we purchased quite a few properties at auction and in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, all the auctions in Jacksonville, Florida are done online. They don't care what time it is for you when you're doing the bidding. As long as your paperwork is in order, you have placed your deposit, you've registered with them, you can absolutely do this from wherever you are. Remembering that when you are bidding at auction, and it's possible to do it online, you still need to make sure that the payment gets to them within the 24 hours. That is very, very important. So you need to have systems in place in the US before you actually start the bidding process. You need to make sure everything will be very smooth. Now, it is also true that there are some areas, such as Texas, where the bidding for tax auction is in person. You have to be there in person to raise your hand and bid on a property and pay right away. So, of course, in that case, for us, it will not necessarily be possible to do it, except for the fact that we do have a team in the US, and part of that team are people based in Texas that could go to the tax auction for us and bid on some properties. In the case of tax auction, one needs to be very careful about one thing. Even though it might look good on paper, you need to make sure that you do not acquire a property entirely sight unseen. So it is something that we always stress to our investors, which is that every property needs to have been seen by a scout. And generally, our scouts will at least make a little recording so that we can see the condition of the property and we can make an assessment of how distressed it is and how much the repairs, the rehab would take, because it is very important, of course, for us to know how much it would cost. That I hope that does make sense. There are other ways, of course. In the past few years, we've been working with a number of wholesalers, for instance, and wholesalers basically act as an intermediary between a seller and an investor. And the wholesalers generally have a list of cash buyers for those properties. So suppose a wholesaler manages to secure a property in Houston, Texas, and they know we have an interest, they will send us and a list of other people a sheet about the property with the information, the size, the amount of work that needs to be done. And in that case, you can actually send a scout to see the property. But the same thing, if we were the accepted buyers for that property, everything can be done online. And this is how foreigners can own properties in the US. It is really important, though, to have a team of people on the ground that can help you manage the process after. You can do all the paperwork, but if you do not set foot in your property, you want to make sure that you have somebody that, for instance, makes sure that it's rented out to the right people, that collects the rent, somebody that you can call to make sure that the pipes get fixed in the winter when there's a problem, or all of that becomes very, very important. Because of course, a property that is bought but stays empty and not taken care of will deteriorate. So that's the other part of this. As a foreigner, you need to know where and how you want to be owning the property and who is going to take care of that. And of course, at Noble Sky, we are very, very happy to discuss your goals for owning a property in the US and to help you manage those investments for you. And please do not hesitate to reach out to one of us and we can help you with that. If you have any question or comment, you feel free to post a question or comment right now. Otherwise, I think I've covered pretty much all that needs to be covered, and for today anyway. And I just want to add that so far, Noble Sky, in the past 4 years since we started helping investors, we've acquired over 70 properties for investors. And it is perfectly okay and legal and supported for us to be investors in the US, whatever color your passport is. Of course, if you're from North Korea, that might be a bit of a challenge, but for the rest, it is perfectly possible. If there are no more questions, I will stop the stream right now, and I will see you in another episode of US Real Estate Investments Explained at a later stage, unless you want to join us on our webinar on Thursday night at 8 p.m. All right. Thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate your patience and you being here. And I will see you very soon.